All right, so now we're going to discuss the configuration files behind X. And the first one we'll look at is the xorg comp file. This is not a file you would typically edit yourself, but it is something you need to know about. There's lots of little GUI applets that we can use to actually configure this file. I'll create the file, and this actually could be good if you ever run into a situation where you cannot get the X server up and going by the default. You can come in here and try to run this and see if you can get a basic environment up and going for yourself. So I'll type xorg and then configure, and this will create an xorg comp file. And as you can see at the very bottom, it says if I want to test this, I can by typing out that command down there at the very bottom. But what I want to do is just go ahead and take a look at that file real quick, and I'll do a less xorg conf. And here are the basic parameters. The three things that this is really in charge of is your display, your screen, your monitor, your mouse, and your keyboard. It basically sets them up and gets them going. It also has a little something in here about fonts and the font server, not something we typically deal with anymore. So this is the basic file. Once again, you wouldn't come in here to edit this, and you can see it talks about the keyboard, it talks about the mouse and some information about that, and then it talks about the monitor. Alright, so that's enough of that. Now remember, we can start. I am currently in run level 3. Alrighty, I started out in 5, I'm in 3. I can type start X. Now, since we have 3 different desktops, I'll type this out, and as you can see, we have start KDE, start X, and start XFCE4. By default, because when I installed the operating system, I installed GNOME. GNOME, when I type start X, GNOME will start up. But if I want to start either one, KDE, I could type that, or I can type XFCE, and that one will start up XFCE. But what we can do with the configuration files is actually tell it which one we want to start by default. Right now we have 3. We can select when we're booting in which one we're going to go into. But maybe I want XFCE to be the default desktop that I go into. Well, I'll start it up. We'll go in here. Well, actually, I won't start. I'll actually go into init 5 because I want to show you something else. What you see here right now is another component of X. Not something I've mentioned before. We talked about the Windows Manager, the File Manager. This is the Display Manager, and its job, this one right here is GDM. Its job is to start X up and then give us a login screen. And we can change this too. As a matter of fact, we can change the background on here. So I'll actually show you that we have different options when it comes to Display Managers too. There's 2 primary files that we'll be editing. So let's go ahead and log in. And then I'll S over to root once I'm in. The directory that we want to go into is Etsy X11. And I'll do an LL here. Here is the main directory. Now the first one we'll look at is that prefdm file. And I'll less that. Actually, I'll VI because we're going to change something in there. This is where we can change our default display manager. Remember that login screen that we see. And you'll notice that it's saying if there's a file called Etsy sysconfig desktop, then look in that file and follow what it says to do. And we can create that file if we want to. And that many times is the easiest way to get things up and going exactly how you want. But we could, since we're in here, we can edit this file directly, and we'll do that. And what I'm going to say here is that I want, let's just say I have a couple of different choices in Display Managers. I have the KDE Display Manager, I have this WDM, and XDM. XDM is the default one that we get with X. So let's go ahead and put that one in there. So I'll say I'll just say user bin XDM. So I'm giving it the path, and you can actually see the path right down here, right? You can see it down there for the WDM anyway. I'll save that. Save that file. I'll knit to run level 3. And then I'll go back to run level 5. And voila, we have a new display manager. Rather boring and ugly, but this is the default X display manager. So I'll log in here. Student. Now you notice my desktop isn't changing. Only thing that changed was my display manager. So I can go back in there again. I'll issue in. I'll do a VI. I was in the directory when that happened, so that's why it gave me that error message. All right, there we go. And I'll say VI. And I'll edit the display manager. This time we'll choose to use the KDE display manager. Back in here. So I'm selecting the KDE display manager. We'll init to 3. Init back to 5. And there you go. We have a brand new one. This is very different than the last one we had, and very different than the GNOME. We can choose our different sessions over here if we want to. We can switch into our different desktops. Lots of different information. All right, so that's a little glimpse at display managers. Next, we'll look at setting up default desktop environments, and I'll show you some fun things you can do.